you do have to know about the basics of Colossus. Over 80% of the injury awards now are from injury award software. So you have to know the basics of it, okay? So let's cover the basics of Colossus or injury award software, okay, and how it applies to the injury award. So here we go. Over 80% of the insurance companies in the United States cases use computer software to determine the value of a car, truck, or motorcycle accident. Most use a computer system called Colossus, which is reportedly used more than 80% of the nation's insurance claims. So the vast majority, over 80% of all insurers, are using some form of claims processing software. Now, this is key, it's only used for common injuries. This is unbelievably important. Now, most of the injuries you guys will see will be common injuries, the common soft tissue injury. So what would be maybe an example of an uncommon injury? Well, what if the person had a scratch on their face and they were a model? That's not a Colossus now. That's a whole nother big case right there. So don't think every case you get should be going through Colossus. But I will tell you, over 80-90% of them will be, okay? So if you do have a unique and unusual circumstance, realize that it's outside the norm. You got something outside the norm, it's not going to be through Colossus. Now you're going to be dealing with a real live insurance adjuster to try to figure this out, okay? So the big four: Colossus, Claims Outcome Advisor, Injury Claims Evaluator, Injury IQ. These are all. Does it matter you know the names? No. Just know that there's something called injury award software. Most insurance companies are using them, and they're for the average case, okay? So, the top 5 financial drivers of injury software. So you got the injury diagnosis, signs, and then symptoms. So it goes injury, diagnosis. Neurological, second. I'm talking about the value. Injuries first always. Neurological second. Symptoms third, signs fourth. And that's the order that you should also list your diagnoses. It's the order of value, financial drivers. So just get used to putting your diagnoses in that order, okay? All right. So the insurance adjuster inputs data received from lawyers, medical records, and the amount of lost wages. Colossus considers the severity, where the accident occurred. Where the accident occurred is very important. Just like the economics, renting a place in New York City is going to be very different than in the suburbs of Kansas City. So it will take into account your region. That's why doctors will say to me, well, what's the average case, or what should I charge? I can't tell you, because it's totally based on your region. Now, when you want to know numbers, like numbers for your region, average case, what you should charge for insurance, for reports and narratives and all that, call your local Trial Lawyers Association. The Trial Lawyers Association is the subcomponent of the Bar Association. That's where the attorneys are who focus on personal injury, okay? Call your local Trial Lawyers Association, because now those are the people who will know all this information for your geographic region, okay? It's like I was on Facebook the other day, and one of the doctors posted to me and said, what should I charge for medical reports? It's totally based on your region. So, somebody, you can't answer it, and nobody's going to know all the regions. There's too many regions and specifics. Are you in urban? Are you north, south, east, or west? Are you in a major city? Are you urban? Are you rural? You see? So when you want to know any of the numbers relative to personal injury, just call your local trial lawyers. Ask to talk to the secretary of the Trial Lawyers Association. I usually ask for the secretary, because when most people call, they want to interact with the president. And the president is dealing with most of the issues. The secretary is the person who kind of knows everything, but isn't bothered all the time. So I always usually ask for the secretary of the Trial Lawyers Association. Okay. here we go. So Colossus will give a higher value for a case in a venue considered favorable for accident victims, rural versus urban. Colossus considers whether the accident lawyer has a history of successfully taking trials to verdict or whether the accident lawyer simply settles. That's why attorneys should always, as a minimum once a year, go to trial, not settle. The attorney, and you need to be aware of this. You'd be surprised how many of your attorneys you're talking to don't even know this. They keep settling. And you know what I always tell the attorneys? I said, well, when you're a kid in kindergarten and the bully beat you up and you didn't do anything, did he keep beating you up or did he leave you alone? That's exactly what the insurance companies are doing when you don't fight back. And it's all documented. Every injury award, just like all your bills, is on record. Everything you're documenting is on a database. It's on record. They'll just pull up the attorney. How many cases? How many he settled? What was the amount he settled? In other words, they're positioning themselves to go, can we push him around? Can we push him around? Colossus considers whether the accident lawyer has a successful history, so we talked about that. And it specifically looks to injuries as described in medical records. 90% of that injury award's from you, the doctor. One of the most important questions is whether the injuries are permanent. So important to understand 3 phases of healing, MMI, and how to give an impairment rating. We make it real simple. Colossus gives higher values for objective injuries measured by diagnostic testing. Well, we know how to do objective injuries for soft tissue injuries. We know how to do that. And we know how to correlate it with hybrid testing, subjective testing, injury magnifiers, and mechanism of injury. We know how to do all of it. So it does give values. For muscle spasms, restrictions, movement, radiating pain, anxiety, depression, headaches, dizziness, visual disturbance, etc. So Colossus also gives greater value in accident cases where the patient went to the hospital for the initial treatment of the injuries immediately after the accident. Takes this information and generates a range of settlement values for the accident case. The problem is Colossus cannot grasp the complexity of the human's pain, so there's no computer that can ascertain pain, suffering, and when the injury really impacted the person's life. How much is it worth to not be able to pick up your newborn baby? A computer can't ascertain that emotional impact. So that's why Colossus is not good with pain and suffering also, the injury award, pain and suffering. One of the categories I'll look at, remember I told you there's 12 categories that will determine the value of the case? One of the things, first of all, I want all 12 categories satisfied, okay? Once I have all 12 satisfied, I always suggest to the attorney that he take it to trial. Bypass the injury award software, take it to trial. Because he's got everything he needs. But one of the components that I'll look at in there was there a highly emotional component in there? If there's a highly emotional component in there, that's even better. An example that I always share with you is the big case that I did that got me well known in my area was the lady could not pick up her 6-year-old child. Well, over half the jury were women. That was a major, that was major. That was huge emotional component. Judges and juries tend to listen and consider many factors that Colossus will ignore. So juries will make the distinction on how much your case is worth based upon whether or not they think the plaintiff is an honest, good person, has suffered as a result of their injuries. So the value of the same injury can vary widely from Colossus. Can vary widely from Colossus to a jury. Okay, a computer cannot understand that kind of information. So why documentation based on Colossus is not the final solution, and occasionally you must sue. The insurance adjuster offer is limited by Colossus. Colossus based on historical data, not personal unique factors into this case. Attorneys record settlements. What if your patient valued strongly, they were a runner and they participated regularly in 10Ks. That was one of the major hobbies In other words, they valued that tremendously, and you could show they participated in regularly. Now they're limited in with them, or they can't do them. See, that's a huge emotional factor for a jury, not Colossus. Attorney's record of settlement's a factor. They need a supervisor for higher awards. So when these injuries get higher, here's the bad news about this. The insurance adjuster putting in this, all your documentation information into the injury software, number one is they don't even have to put it in. They're not required to show you what they are putting into the injury software. They're not required to show the attorney that. So you don't even know if they're putting in it or not. They can do what they want. But that's why they can also be sued for what's called bad faith. Secondly, when they do put it in, the insurance adjuster is motivated to keep, they're bonused and motivated to not have the injury award go up. You know how you guys will pay attention like case averages and dollar per visit, right? They're doing the same thing. They're trying to keep their case averages down and low, and you're trying to increase your case averages. So they're doing the opposite. They're trying to keep it low. And then for them to go over certain amounts, they have to get their supervisor's approval. So you got a lot of negativity when you got larger amounts, so you got a fight on your hands. So what does the attorney have to do occasionally? He's got to take it to trial and let them know, I'm not going to let you bully me. And the only way that they listen is by going to trial. And so that's why sometimes you can have all this documentation we talk about, but still get a lowball offer from the insurance company. Why? How many forces are going against that case coming up? Well, the insurance adjuster doesn't want to rise it. That affects their job security, right? They don't want cases going up. They may not even be putting in the data. So occasionally, when you do have all the data and you get a lowball offer, that's when the attorney has to realize he's got to stop being bullied. He's being bullied. He's got to sue. He's got to take him to court. He's got to bypass Colossus. Let a high school educated jury make the decision. You know what I told an attorney last night? He was asking me about that. You know, going to trial, not going to trial. I said, this is one of my favorite lines that I tell attorneys. When they're on the line with the insurance adjuster, and they got all 12 categories lined up, right? Mechanism of injury, injury magnifier, subjective, hybrid, totally. Are you with me? You got all 12 categories lined up, right? This is the line. And it's not raising it to the highball offer. I tell the attorney to say this. I just want you to know that if we can't settle this according to all the documentation, I just want you to know that this is what the high school educated jury is going to hear. They're going to hear that there was a mechanism of injury. They're going to hear that there's injury magnifiers that made this worse. They're going to hear that there were signs that were directly related to that accident. Then they were going to hear there's total hybrid objective signs with that accident. Then they're going to see totally objective signs that accident caused that injury. And then they're going to see what therapy we used to help them based on the 3 phases of healing. Then they're going to see that they didn't improve anymore. That injury is now permanent, and it's based on the science of the 3 phases of healing. Then they're going to see how the doctor went to the impairment rating. They made guides for the impairment rating. Then they're going to see what the prognosis was and the need for future care. And however old your person is, that's how much money that they're going to get for the rest of their life. That's what they're going to see. And then they're going to see how we take the pre-existing injury and subtract it out. So the jury is going to totally see the percentage of liability of your insurance company. That's what we're going to present to a high school educated jury. You think we can work this offer out to a little bit better than what you're doing? That's exactly what I tell the attorney to say. In other words, I'm letting them know we're getting ready to come after you. Stop being bullied around.